Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way at the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick. The Heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory. Williams is the running back next to Howe. Play action. Howe will now lob it down the near side. Newsom with a man all over him. Pins the ball against the back of the defender and brings it in. Heels can get a first down at the 3. Now, pump fake to the right. Now he's going to run to the left. Now at the 5. Takes the shot. Pinballing off the chains for the touchdown. Sam Howe showing the toughness for 6. Cardinals down 4, 35-31. May has the shotgun snap. Pressure coming. Rolls to the right. Throws to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Antoine Green! 16 seconds to go. No flag. Snapping it off the 8-yard line. May pulls it, tries to roll it apart. But now he's going to throw it and score! Christian May throws it to Payson in the end zone for the touchdown! They are throwing this one left hand. Was walking out on the run and threw it left-handed. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotta, here with you guys as always. And tonight, me and Josh Marlowe here to get you ready for the game between Carolina and Clemson that will take place in Kenan Stadium on Saturday afternoon. Wish it was Saturday night. At one time, we thought this could be a Saturday night game, but this is going to be a high noon kickoff between these two sides on ESPN. Could be one of the last times that Carolina is on ESPN for a while this season. So we're going to go through. We're going to get you ready by looking at the Clemson Tigers. We're going to also get you a look at Carolina's storylines coming into this game, and then get to our keys to the game and predictions for the game on Saturday. So plenty to talk about here on this edition of the podcast. We just had some news drop on the official injury report. So that is something that I will be writing for the website, of course, but we are going to be giving you updates, including a very significant one about a member of the trenches that we have not seen yet this season. So make sure that you stick around for all of that. We'll do that when we're going through the storylines for Carolina. So, let's just, this matchup, let's jump right into it. The Tar Heels looking for their first Power 4 win, still under the direction of Bill Belichick so far. You've got the win over FCS Richmond. You've got the win over the Group of 5 opponent in Charlotte. And the other two games have not really gone the way that you were hoping they would go. 82 points allowed in those first two games against power conference opponents. You also have scored just 23 during that stretch. So you have been blown out in both games that you have played against power conference competition. Carolina hoping that they're going to be able to change that against a Clemson team that is off to a tough start to the year. There's no doubt about that. Clemson leads the all-time series 40-19-1 is the record for them in the series. So this is one that Carolina is going to be fighting an uphill battle against. But, the thing is, Clemson comes in relatively vulnerable considering the fact that they're off to a 1-3 start. I don't think anybody thought that they were going to lose to Syracuse, especially in the fashion that they lost to Syracuse. So this is definitely a Clemson team that is having their own issues that they're going through as well. But, Josh Marlowe, when you look at this game, you look at both of these teams coming in here really limping after non-conference play. Clemson, of course, still has a non-conference game, a couple of non-conference games late in the season that they're going to play. But just you look at the first 4 games of the season, first third of the year for both of these sides, where do you think that both sides sit coming into this game?
Yeah, they're not where they thought they were going to be. Carolina, record-wise, might be where they should be all along, but when you're 2-2 and you've been as non-competitive as they've been against Power Four competition, I think that's why Carolina fans that are disgruntled are disgruntled. There's some Carolina fans that haven't really overreacted and freaked out, and if that's how you choose to rock your fandom, I'm not going to criticize that. If you're someone like me that expected more and you're frustrated with how non-competitive it's looked, then I'm not going to criticize you for doing that either. But this is a Clemson team that is looking to just try to look and feel like the Clemson team we saw at the end of last year that won an ACC championship, that played Clemson a tough 60 minutes on the road in the college football playoff. And, it was a big reason why I, among many people in the media, pick them to win this league, get back to the playoff, and win a national championship. But they sit here at 1-3, and it feels like their program under Dabo Swinney is finally at that crossroads that we've kind of been talking about for the last 3 to 4 years. It feels like now they've really got to that point with them starting preseason top 5. They find themselves at 1-3. There's really not a path for them to make the playoff this year. So it's going to feel like another lost year at Clemson. And so, they're looking to come into into your building and try to turn their season around. And so Carolina has to be prepared for that. And I think for Carolina fans that don't expect to win this game on Saturday, I think the biggest thing we want to see is just growth and development, and this group be competitive against a conference opponent. And something that Jones Angel was kind of talking about, and Michael Lombardi was talking about during the radio show on Monday night, and this is something that I think I'm going to buy into, so I can try to remain optimistic. This team has one game in 27 days. With the way the schedule falls, with the bye before this game and the bye after this game, which means Carolina has a lot of practice time. And so if this staff is really worth the price that Carolina paid the staff to be, then we should see this team make progress without being on the field against competition, because how much Bill Belichick values practice and those reps. So that's kind of something that I'm holding on to hope for as we enter conference play, is that hopefully, as optimistic as he sounded on Tuesday night or when he did his press conference, hopefully this team did get better in the week off and they're ready to be at least more competitive against ACC competition.
Yeah, I think, hey, look, man, it can't really get much worse than what we saw in the first 2 games against power conference competition. And that is really the bar that we are trying to set, is just look better than you looked in those games. Show us some progress as the season goes along. Become more competitive. Because here's the thing, you look at the games that Carolina's played. Yeah, they played TCU, a team that looks like that might be the best team on the schedule that they play all year. That's debatable, I guess, whether or not you think, the way that Virginia's playing right now, maybe you would elevate them ahead of them. But I do think that that's one of the top 2-3 best teams that you're going to play all year on your schedule. Clemson is a team that's a little weird. I'm not going to lie to you. They're a team that, we thought was going to be right near the top, but hasn't necessarily gotten off to that kind of start. But, we think going into this game, this team's better than Central Florida. Like Central Florida, I think they showed you, they came back to earth against Kansas State. And you could say, well, maybe Kansas State was just due for a win. That was a team that was picked to win the Big 12 in the preseason. Maybe you're right. But to be honest with you, I think that's more of what you're going to see from Central Florida the rest of the year. I don't think they're necessarily going to be a good team. So at this point, yeah, you are really hoping that what we see from Carolina in this game is that they have taken this time to get better during the bye week. They've had a chance to sort of get a little bit more practice time under their belt. Maybe this was basically just, the preseason mindset that people were buying into. I'm not buying that. I still think we're going to see much the same team that ends up rolling out there on Saturday, but you're hoping that there are some things that are a little bit better and can at least take steps towards Carolina being competitive with the rest of their schedule. Maybe it doesn't happen in this game, but maybe there are some elements. Maybe you see this offense get a little bit better. Maybe you see this defense provide a little more resistance from the 20 to the 20, where Carolina has really been picked apart at times this year by the two power conference opponents that they've played. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be starting to trend in the right direction, or else this just turns into complete misery on this podcast really moving forward. Because yeah, if this team comes out, just gets absolutely destroyed by Clemson, I don't really know how many other games on their schedule are remotely winnable. There are some games that they still play at home that I guess you would feel like maybe Carolina has a chance in, but this game, I think, means a lot in terms of at least seeing the fight from this group. When you look at Clemson, the reason that we're talking about them the way that we are is this team is 1-3 so far overall, and they're 0-2 in conference. They have seen 2 conference games. Georgia Tech, a team who looks like they are destined to at least factor into the ACC regular season race. And then Syracuse. Now, Syracuse, of course, things changed completely for them when they lost their starting quarterback, Steve Angeli. But that's not a team that a lot of people were expecting would be competing for an ACC title this season, would be competing to make it to Charlotte. I don't think anybody thought that was going to happen. So that's a bad loss. They come in here limping a little bit. Offensively, they are one of the few teams that come in with a worse offense in terms of points per game than Carolina this season. 19.8 points per game. They're averaging 365.3 yards of total offense, 249 passing yards per game, and 116.3 rushing yards per game. You look at what they really have on the offensive side of the ball. It starts at quarterback with Cade Klubnik. Really, the thing for him is he looks like he did 2 years ago. He's back to the inconsistencies. There are moments where he looks really good. There are times where you think, okay, he's starting to get his season back on track. And there are moments where he shows you that he is struggling. This is not going to be a year that he is going to be able to replicate the type of success that he had even last year, which got him on some draft boards and had many people believing that he was the preseason Heisman favorite. I think, again, that says more about the guys that are around college football this year, that maybe there isn't nearly as much talent or as much holdover talent as there was in previous years. But I do think that Cade Klubnik is a guy that could come out in this game. We've seen it before. 2 years ago, was off to a slow start. All of a sudden, he turns it on. Even last year, gets off to a horrible start in that game against Georgia. And then as he gets into conference play, really starts to get it going. So he only really needs one game to turn things back in the right direction. So Carolina's got to be aware of that. Their running game, Adam Randall, the converted wide receiver, has proved to be a pretty serviceable back. He's averaging 5.9 yards per carry so far this season, which is a very healthy number. That is one that I think you look at that, you look at the number of rushing yards per game, doesn't really blow you away. But he is certainly a guy that when he touches the ball, he's having success. Some people may even be suggesting to get the ball to him a little bit more as the season goes along. You go to the wide receiver spot. Bryant Wesco is the big play threat that Carolina has to be aware of in this game. He has had a really strong start to the season in terms of being the touchdown threat. He's tied for the ACC lead in touchdowns this season with 5. He's got over 300 yards receiving as well. So he's been very successful, has been a big play threat for them down the field as well, averaging 16.2 yards per reception on his 24 catches. And the thing is, outside of him, it's a group that, has some names. I mean, we talked about this wide receiving core being one of the best in the country. We thought that they were going to be right on par with Ohio State, with some of the other really good receiving cores out there. But TJ Moore, hasn't really been that explosive so far out of the gate this season. And Tyler Brown, the other guy who has had to step up in the slot due to the injury to Antonio Williams, He's averaging just 9.8 yards per catch. So those guys, I mean, look, they're solid options, but they haven't been nearly as explosive as I think people thought they were going to be. The good news for Clemson is that they do have what they would perceive potentially as their top wide receiver in Antonio Williams back, their top possession wide receiver for sure. He is back, ready to go for this game after he played in the game against Syracuse. He should be closer to 100% in this game, so Carolina is going to have to be aware of him. The offensive line, really one of the biggest issues that they've had outside of quarterback has been this unit. We thought they were going to be one of the better ones in the ACC coming into the year. They have suffered some injuries down there, but the guys that are down there haven't necessarily been able to step up. They've allowed only 1 sack so far this year, but they have allowed 41 total quarterback pressures. So that averages out to a little over 10 per game, which is certainly not where you want to be at any point in the season, no matter who the competition is that you played. Colin Sadler, Harris Sewell, and Treston Lee all have had issues in run blocking, so that is certainly something that is noteworthy. You look at this offense for Clemson, it's a unit that's putting up some yards, something that Carolina is not doing, but they're just like Carolina, they're not really scoring a whole lot of points either. This is one of the few reasons why you can believe this game is going to be close between these two sides.
Yeah, it's really dumbfounding how bad Clemson is offensively. I don't think Cade Klubnik is as bad as he has looked through the first 4 games. Their inability to run the ball makes sense considering the fact they chose to convert a wide receiver to play running back as opposed to go portaling and bringing in a difference maker at that position. None of that matters, though, because the offensive line is the biggest reason why the offense is what it is. It made sense maybe to see them struggle against LSU because that's that revamped defense for the Bayou Bengals is as good as any defense in the country. Like LSU has a championship caliber defense, and it starts up front. But to see what's happened since then, their inability to push around, whether it's a Georgia Tech, a Syracuse, you got to remember this team was down two possessions or 2 scores to Troy deep in the first half as well. That's what's really just confusing because you thought that Clemson was kind of back to where they were with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, where they were just going to be physically imposing their will at the line of scrimmage and just be able to utilize the bevy of playmakers they have in that wide receiver room and put points and yards up as well as anybody in the ACC, as well as anybody in all of college football. And that just hasn't been the case. And a lot of criticism has come, their offensive coordinator's way, Garrett Riley, and I think that's very much deserved. But make no mistake, they're going to look at this as a get-right game for them. They've seen the struggles from what Carolina has done against TCU, what Carolina struggled with against Central Florida, and they'll try to incorporate that into their game plan to try to get this offense going. And I do think, this is going to be, I think, a game where, obviously there's going to be a lot of talk and conversation around the friendship that Dabo Swinney and Bill Belichick share. But I do think that if Clemson is to jump on Carolina, kind of like TCU was able to do in that second half and what Central Florida was able to do, I don't see a scenario where Clemson takes their foot off the gas. Because of the statement that I think Dabo Swinney feels like he needs to send to a fan base that's just about out on him. If they can get the chance to embarrass Carolina, embarrass Bill Belichick in their building, I think they're going to do that. And so hopefully Carolina can try to look at what some of these other schools have done to try to limit them defensively, because Carolina's not going to score enough points, I don't think, if this game gets into a shootout to win. Like, the only way I think Carolina can win this game is if they drag him into the mud and this thing is 17-14, 21-17 maybe in the fourth quarter. And so Carolina, I think, has got to be prepared for that. So Clemson's certainly better than what their numbers should suggest. But like Bill Parcells says, you are what your record says you are. You are what your stats say you are. And the stats suggest this is an offense that can move the football from 20 to 20, but has a hard time crossing the goal line and putting up touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. To me, it's mind-blowing how bad this team has been, but it all starts with what they've done up front. I just can't believe that this is a team that when we voted preseason for the All-ACC team, we put most of their offensive linemen in that All-ACC group. And I know there's been injuries. I know that's a big part of it. And that's certainly something that we couldn't have accounted for then. But I still don't think that we thought, no matter what, we did not think that it was going to be this bad for them offensively. I think, a lot of the criticism has gone Garrett Riley's way. Very similar to what we've heard from Carolina fans complaining about Freddie Kitchens. What we've said about Freddie Kitchens, that there's just not a lot of creativity to the offense. There's not really the ability to, spread the field and consistently. Now, I will say that part of it is, you didn't go out and get a true running back. Although, again, we heard that this true freshman, Gideon Davidson, was supposed to be the real deal. He has not seen the field for most of this year. He has not really been that much of a factor at all. I mean, he has 3 carries for 11 yards the whole season. So that tells you that they have not seen what they've needed to see out of him. Adam Randall, the thing for me is I don't think Adam Randall has been that bad. 57 carries so far this year. He's averaging 5.9 yards a carry. So he's a guy that, maybe he isn't getting the requisite blocking up front in terms of the blocking grades from Pro Football Focus, but he's a guy that's able to clearly run through tackles and make things happen. Why are you not using him a little bit more is probably the question that you would have if you were a Clemson fan. The wide receivers, as good as some of these guys have been, including Bryant Wesco, when they have some of these moments where these targets go awry, it's because they are dropping passes. We have seen a lot of that throughout the year. It just looks like a unit that's discombobulated. So to me, it's not a unit that lacks talent. We have asked that question with Carolina on both sides of the ball. Do they lack talent? That is not the case at Clemson. It's just for some reason right now, the message is not landing. I don't know if this team thought coming into the season that things were going to be easier than they were in years past, that they felt like they were just destined to roll to, the college football playoff and then eventually potentially win a national championship, or at least be in contention and in, one of those Final Four spots, or, even in the national championship game. But it just feels like this team really thought things were going to be easier, and they've kind of been caught off guard by how well a team like Georgia Tech played them. Even, in the opener against LSU, I don't think they were expecting that much of a fight from LSU. They thought with the struggles that they had in openers, this would be a team that would roll over. They never really did. And you need to be better offensively. You need to be able to put up points in the modern era of college football if you're going to win. So if you're Carolina, you're hoping that you can get this offense off schedule again in this one. The biggest way to be able to do that is to create some turnovers. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But there's some things that you can do to sort of take Clemson's offense out of the game and put them in a difficult spot once again. If that's the only way I think you're going to win this game. Because, Carolina is not built for a shootout. No matter what quarterback they put out there, they are not built for a shootout. So Carolina's got to be ready for that. Part of the reason why they're also, getting into a shootout is probably easier said than done is because of Clemson's defense. 22.8 points per game, 362 yards of total offense allowed per game, 240.3 passing yards allowed per game, and 121.8 rushing yards allowed per game. The defensive line, team that, it's a group that's been pushed around a little bit at times so far this year. The Purdue transfer, Will Hilt, probably the best defensive lineman that we've seen so far this year out of this group. That was not expected to be the case. He was supposed to be the guy that was just the missing piece to plug in with the guys that were playing at an incredibly high level, guys that are big-time NFL prospects like TJ Parker and Peter Woods. Now, the thing that I do want to stress is that these guys are not playing terribly. It's not like, even Carolina's defensive line, some of the numbers would suggest to you that they're not really playing that bad. But I do think that those guys, there is a lot of talent there. You feel like that's a group that's going to be able to find their success. And I just don't know if Carolina's offensive line is going to be able to push them around the way that LSU did, the way that Georgia Tech did. Syracuse, to a certain extent was able to do that, but that was really more just because of the success that they had passing the football. This is a group that Carolina's got to be careful with because they can turn it on at any time as well and become one of the best in the entire country. Wade Woodaz, along with Sammy Brown, both have been solid at linebacker, not great, but I think they've just taken care of business when they've needed to so far this year. The running games that we've seen them face so far, it's always tough to sort of grade how you perform against a team like Georgia Tech because Georgia Tech runs the ball just so much. That's their entire offense. There's literally nothing else that Georgia Tech does besides run the football. So I think that, from that perspective, you look at some of the other games that they've played, they've done a pretty good job of helping to slow down the run. So that is definitely a unit that is worthwhile on that side of the ball. And then the secondary, Avian Terrell, one of the best corners in the entire country, definitely a standout, but the rest of the unit has had some ups and downs. Steve Angeli was able to carve that group up a little bit. If you can control that defensive line, Carolina could be able to do the same thing if their quarterbacks are able to get the ball downfield a little bit more consistently. So certainly something to keep an eye on going into this weekend if you're looking for some signs of hope against this Clemson defense. You look at this Clemson defense, again, I don't think they're anywhere near what we thought they were going to be. We thought this was going to be one of the stingiest groups in the entire country. They haven't necessarily been that, but let's not act like they have been terrible either to start out the season.
They haven't been bad, but could I argue that they haven't been good either, despite what their numbers would suggest? I thought this was going to be the best defense in the country. Todd McShay said back in a summer edition of his podcast, he saw 8 players from their defense being drafted in next year's draft. Maybe that still happens. It won't be in the way that we thought it would be with a number of those guys maybe going on Thursday night, going into Friday night. There could be a lot of guys that find themselves going Friday and Saturday as opposed to the first round. And another thing that's really odd is you bring in you get an upgrade with your defensive coordinator. You bring in one of the best defensive coaches in the sport. Something that they've been clamoring for if they lost Brent Venables was for Dabo to go make the outside hire. He finally goes and does that. And for whatever reason, they've just struggled in critical situations, like areas where you're used to seeing Clemson make plays. When it's 3rd and 3 and you got to get off the field to force a punt, they get that stop. When when they need to maybe force a turnover to change the momentum of a game, they get that turnover, they get that sack. Whatever those plays are, this group has not made them. And then what happened against Syracuse was you just saw a group that I thought was beaten and battered mentally and kind of just gave in to the fact that Syracuse could walk the football up and down the field against them, and with just with all the pressure on them to respond and a fan base turning against them, they weren't able to do the things that you would expect a Dabo Swinney-led team to do on the defensive side of the football. With that being said, Carolina's offense is just what the doctor ordered for this defense to find its mojo, to find its moxie, and to start to play with the swagger that you expect them to do, because I think their defensive line is going to outclass our offensive line. And if Gio Lopez is the guy taking snaps, it's really hard to have any sort of belief he'll make the types of plays that, Nussmeier, Haynes King, and Angeli were able to make to beat Clemson, let alone beat the Clemson Tigers or be competitive with the Clemson Tigers along in the process. So, their numbers aren't bad. Their numbers could be better, but you could really see the defense that we thought we were going to see all year long show up in a big way on Saturday, because as of right now, Carolina's too maligned on offense to see to see us moving the football up and down the field like these other teams have.
Yeah, I mean, it's the truth. Unless you believe that this offensive line, with the time that they had during this bye week, was able to really find something, I don't see how you can compete with this defensive line. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is one of those games where Carolina stands up, puts together their best offensive line performance. The thing that we've said is that they haven't really been that bad in pass protection. It's just you have not been able to throw the ball at all. And so I don't think that's going to change really in this game. No matter which quarterback's in there, I just don't know how much they are going to be able to give you. They're not going to be able to give you what Steve Angeli was able to give you. And that's probably what you would need if you were going to find a way to win this game, especially with the lack of talent that you have in certain areas. I mean, yeah, it feels like this is a more attackable unit. But when you talk about, you said that this feels like a get-right game for this team. I think when you look at both sides of the ball, which unit has the chance to get right in this one? Which one would you think has the better chance to do that? I would think it's the defense. I really do think that defensively, they have been better than they've been offensively. Offensively, they have been just absolutely horrible. I think there are a lot of things on that side of the ball that it's going to take time to clean up. I don't know if Cade Klubnik really is that guy. I think they are, going to be somewhat relieved at the end of the season when he's gone and they can move on to a different quarterback, whether that's somebody that they get out of the transfer portal, which is probably the way they should go, or if they go with somebody that's on their current roster. But I think they have problems with him. I think they have an issue with the offensive coordinator. I think Garrett Riley definitely seems to be out of touch with what leads to success for his offense. I don't think him and his starting quarterback are on the same page. And so I believe that this side of the ball, though, defensively is where they can probably get back on track. And I just don't know if Carolina has the horses there right now to be able to compete with them, mainly at that quarterback spot. You go to special teams, Nolan Hooser struggling early so far this year, but he was a major weapon for him last year. So far this year, he's 3 of 5 on his field goals, 1 of 3 from 40-plus yards. He's a guy, though, that can get it on track just about any time, and when he does, he's going to be one of the better kickers in the entire country. So Carolina's got to be aware of that. They know that he's going to be a weapon for them that they're going to be able to use from probably 50 yards out. They would probably attempt field goals with him. So this is going to be on the defense to be pretty stout and not allow them to get even into field goal range, because that's it. With the way that this offense is for Carolina, how inept it's been, you could see Clemson having one of those types of games where they find the end zone once, kick field goals the rest of the game, and still find a way to win. Jack Smith punting the ball, he's been doing that pretty well so far, averaging 43.2 yards per punt, and he has had just 3 punts returned so far this year. Those have been returned for a grand total of 0 yards. The return games, they've been solid, but nothing spectacular, so certainly not something that I think we will have to be too worried about from that perspective going into this game. But, of course, you never know. There are areas that always seem to pop up for Carolina, and this is one of those games that's going to mean a whole lot for the team on the other side. All right, before we get into our Tar Heel storylines, we need to tell you about our sponsor for tonight's episode of the podcast, and we want to thank our guy, Gardner Payne. He is, someone that we used to work with, came to us with a business opportunity, and we have to tell you about it here tonight because it's a really cool thing. It's called Legacy Arcade and Social Casino. You can win cash prizes with roulette, blackjack, your favorite slot games, and multiplayer fish games. Me, personally, I'm a blackjack guy. I love that. It's really cool. Went on there and checked out the arcade a couple of days ago and played a couple of rounds of blackjack. Didn't go too great for me, but, it still is something that's really fun if you're into those types of games. You can win cash prizes by playing your favorite arcade games. All you got to do, guys, is click on, screenshot that QR code or scan that with your phone right now as you're watching here on the edition of the podcast. And then when you get there, all you got to do is put in the promo code HEELS, and you will get up to $100 free in match play at registration. It's safe, secure, and has 24-hour customer support. Instant redemption immediately to your bank account or card, which is, of course, very important. And all major credit cards, Skrill or ACH, are accepted. Apple Pay is coming soon. So make sure you guys head over there, help us out, use that promo code. That would really help us. And it's a cool way for if you are into any of those types of games. Again, I'll read them off here for you. Roulette, blackjack, your favorite slot games, or multiplayer fish games, which, if you had never heard of fish games, they are really cool. It's a cool way to sort of win money. So make sure you guys go over there and check that out. All right, let's get to the Tar Heel storylines for this evening. And when we start with the Tar Heel storylines, how can we start anywhere else? It's got to be the quarterback situation, because the quarterback situation is what pretty much looms over this entire team. If they are not able to figure this out, then this team is not going to be successful. The injury report came out earlier this evening. Gio Lopez is listed as questionable officially going into the game. So that is, about what we expected. I think we thought there was a chance that he was going to be able to be back due to the initial reports. Then you got, Bill Belichick saying during his press conference earlier this week, he said, hey, Gio is going to be back out there today. That was on Tuesday. Said he was going to be back out there today. They'd have to monitor him and see what he did today before they made any sort of decision. And, of course, that was something that probably carried over throughout the rest of the week. They will make that decision more than likely at game time, whether or not Gio Lopez is healthy enough to go. Max Johnson, the other guy that is taking reps with the ones. That's what almost said Mac Brown. That's what Bill Belichick said. Guys, it seems like to me, and I know you did the Bill Belichick press conference reactions, the press conference takeaways edition of the podcast yesterday. To me, and I'm interested to see what you think, I thought basically what he said was that Gio Lopez is going to be the guy if he's healthy. Now, if he struggles, then maybe we end up turning to Max Johnson. But I think even in that case, I don't know how much longer they have to see him struggle. I think they're going to give him every chance to be this team's starting quarterback. I got to tell you, I don't really get it, because I think by this point in the season, you kind of know the player that you've got. You could say that maybe since he suffered the injury against TCU, that he is just not the same player. But this is a guy that's already pretty beat up. He is a guy that's struggling beyond anything that we could have possibly imagined. And this team really needs good quarterback play right now. I think you should roll with Max Johnson in this game, but I find it hard to believe that if Gio Lopez is healthy enough that they are actually going to do that.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that if Gio's healthy enough and is cleared and given the go, he's going to play. And I think more so than anything, I do believe it has nothing to do with the fact that Carolina paid him the money that they paid him. I think that they are still in the evaluation process. And while they probably will not make this message known publicly, maybe they don't think a bowl game is in reach. Because I think if Max Johnson were to play the final 8 games, could he get to Carolina? Could he go 4-4 and get Carolina to a bowl game? I think it's more feasible with Max than it is with Gio, right? But if this is really the build that they were that Michael Lombardi was talking about on Monday, and when he wrote the letter to the boosters and saying like it's going to take us 2 to 3 years to get this roster where we needed to get to compete, then maybe they're going to view this as, hey, let's get the best evaluation possible of Gio. Maybe 4 games isn't enough for Bill, for Freddie, for that entire staff, even though we think it is, to really figure out what they want to do with that position going into next year. Do you go portaling once again, or do you maybe turn to Bryce Baker, the guy that I told you last year when he committed to Carolina, I would have been okay going through the ups and downs of this season with that guy being my quarterback if he's going to be the future of the program, like he was kind of sold on us to be when they recruited him and landed him in December of last year. So I don't necessarily love the decision to continue to play Gio because, guys know, man, like, the locker room will tell you how they feel about a quarterback.
Yep.
And it's, to me, it's not a coincidence that whenever Max Johnson has entered the game in injury relief of Gio Lopez, that the offense just looks a lot better. I'm not saying it's world beating. I'm not saying it's as explosive and as dynamic as it should be, but both times he led them right down the field and did things that Gio Lopez just has failed to do in all this time he has gotten so far this season. So I don't agree with that decision. I'd much rather see Max Johnson out there, but it appears as of right now that Bill Belichick and Freddie Kitchens are going to be committed to Gio Lopez, assuming he's healthy enough to play.
Yeah, I think that is certainly the way that they're leaning. I am one that believes that the money is probably a factor. You could say whatever you want about we need to go through an evaluation period. Dude, the evaluation period should be over. You are at the 5th game of the season. You have to know what you've got on this roster. How long is it going to take you to evaluate this roster? Is it going to take 2/3 of the year? And then, the final 4 games of the season will really be able to turn it on. By that point, you're out of a bowl game. Like, I'm sorry, you have to have evaluated your roster by this time. If not, then you have to have it done by the time you get to Cal. There is absolutely zero excuse. When it comes to Gio Lopez, I just don't know how much more you can evaluate with this kid. How much more can you honestly see from him that it tells you, yeah, this is the guy, man? Because I'm going to be honest, he could come out and perform great in this game. And I'm still going to say to myself, was that a blip on the radar? Is Clemson really just that bad? I don't know that I can trust him. And I promise you, that's not going to happen. If he starts this game, Carolina will get blown the hell out. There will be no chance for Carolina to compete in this game because he's just not a Power 4 quarterback. Not for this team. He might be for a different team. But for this team, he does not fit what Freddie Kitchens in this offense wants to do. And I know Freddie Kitchens because I have had him as my offensive coordinator before at the NFL level. Freddie Kitchens is as stubborn as it gets. He is not a guy that's going to change things mid-season. So unless they roll out a completely different playbook and all of a sudden this is an offense that just completely takes off, I don't see how you can roll with Gio Lopez. You got to give Max Johnson at least a shot, right? I mean, you could say, well, the story is great, but, we're still worried about his leg. You could say whatever you want. The fact of the matter is, in 2 games against power conference opponents, Gio Lopez has played the majority of those games as opposed to Max Johnson. He's played about 65% of those 2 games. He has thrown for 156 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and has 1 fumble. Max Johnson, he has thrown for 170 yards. He's thrown for more yards than he has during that time. And keep in mind, he entered the game in the 3rd quarter in both of those games. He has 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and has not fumbled the ball. To me, it seems pretty simple that you need to at least give him a chance. If Max Johnson comes in there and is playing terribly, then okay, let's go back to Gio. Let's go to Bryce Baker. Let's get a look at Arturi Newkirk. Let's see what we really have. But give yourself a chance to, 1, make a bowl game, which, at this point, I don't see Carolina being able to do. Unless they really pick it up on the back end of their schedule, Duke really means that much to Bill Belichick. They find a way to pull a massive upset. State's defense is really just that terrible that you somehow come out and pull an upset in that game. I just don't know how in the world you find yourself in a bowl game. But the more important thing is that what Max Johnson can allow you to do is evaluate the rest of this roster offensively. It gives you a chance to look at the wide receivers, the running backs, the tight ends, maybe a little bit at the offensive line, and really get a gauge for what those units are producing, who deserves to stick around next season, and who's part of the group that's going to be moving on. Mainly, it's for those receivers because you've got to figure out that group. Because right now, I mean, you look at the production, I mean, it's nowhere near where it should be. But when your quarterback cannot throw the football, and I mean, we look at it, you look at where he's throwing the ball, most of it is short or behind the line of scrimmage. We need to get a look at these guys going down the field. And Max Johnson, throwing a lot of stuff short, a lot of stuff behind the line of scrimmage as well. But I think he has the ability to drive the ball downfield a little bit more than we saw from Gio Lopez. Throws with a little bit more anticipation, a little bit more accuracy. So it allows you to evaluate those positions. That's the key thing for me. If you can figure out your quarterback situation, you can find someone that is good enough to at least make this offense somewhat efficient. We're not even talking about as efficient as they were at times under Larry Fedora and Mac Brown. We're talking about just being competent enough to be able to score in the 20s. You might have a chance to actually win this game. One of the other big storylines was the bye week, what this team needed, or is the lack of talent just too much to overcome? I think a lot of people are wondering, was this bye week the perfect time for Carolina to just hit the reset button, to sort of settle themselves down, figure out, okay, what went wrong in the first 4 games? What went right, even though there wasn't much that went right? How can we correct some of these things? And maybe they just needed a breather. Now this group, with a little bit more practice time, maybe they will be a much closer group. Because you remember, first game happens on a Monday night. They have to turn around quickly, play Charlotte. They weren't able to practice much that week. Then you had 2 regular weeks of practice. But, this certainly gave them a little bit more time to actually get on the field and practice, a little bit more time in the film room to sort of learn some of the issues that they've had. Was this bye week what this team needed? I think is going to be one of the biggest things that we're going to be talking about going into this game. And I really do hope that the bye week allows this team to overcome the talent gap that they have. It allows this coaching staff to scheme up some things that they haven't really been able to early on in the season, because if not, this thing could be pretty ugly for Carolina against Clemson.
Yeah, the message coming out of the building is this is just what the doctor ordered. With the way that Carolina revamped their roster in the spring portal, this roster as of Tuesday had only had 35 total practices together. And for when you've got 70 new players, new coach, new coordinators, new staff, that's not enough time, I don't think, to really be where maybe my expectations were when I had this team going 10-2, or maybe even if some people thought they'd go 8-3, 9-4, they should be more competitive, yes. But this is still, I think, a roster and a coaching staff that's still getting to learn one another as this season has moved along. And so, yes, I'm going to buy into that because I think that's something to be optimistic about moving forward the rest of the season. And I still want to be optimistic in 2025. I don't want to be negative, and I don't want to be out on this year just yet. We might get there. We could be there by the time we get done playing Clemson in California this month, but I want to hold out hope until we have to get to that point. And I do think, you did see some improvements against, in certain areas from TCU to Charlotte, from Charlotte to Richmond, but there was just a massive step back from Richmond to Central Florida. I think a lot of that is the talent level that Carolina is going against, because no, they don't have the talent right now, I think, to compete with some of the schools that they've been beaten by so far. But hopefully, yes, they took a step forward. And Belichick was maybe as upbeat as he's been all year long in the media, talking about the progress and the growth he saw them take in, situational. They had a situational practice the other day where all they did was drill situational football. They need to get better at that. And the fundamentals, there's still areas where they just don't do the basic things, whether it comes to tackling, blocking, or whatever. So I'm going to say yes, because it gives me a reason to be hopeful and optimistic. This can still be a fun season to remember. And keep in mind that there could still be a scenario where Carolina loses this game and they lose it very non-competitively, but that bye week could still show up to be a big thing as we move, as this season moves forward with another bye week on the horizon.
Yeah, I would like to remain positive as well, and believe that this bye week was exactly what this team needed, that the extra practice will allow them to grow a little bit closer. The communication will be better on both sides of the ball, and this will be a team that will be able to succeed. But I do think that the lack of talent is a big issue. And I think that we did not think that it was nearly that big of an issue going into the season. But I think as the year's gone along, we've seen it. When you look at Carolina in the trenches, as opposed to the teams on the other side, when they play these power conference opponents, you can see a clear difference. When you look at the quarterback play from Carolina to the teams on the other side, there's a clear difference. And that's even going against UCF, where they got a guy in Taven Jackson who wasn't even going to be their starter to begin the season. And he looked so much better than Gio Lopez. It wasn't even funny. I think you look across the roster and you just wonder, is there enough talent here to be able to hold up against a team like Clemson in this matchup? Clemson is as talented as just about any team in the country. It's just a matter of getting those guys to play the right type of football. For Carolina, I think they are one of the least talented teams in the country, and it's also about getting them to play the right type of football. So that going up against Clemson, again, unless Clemson is really just in their head at this point in the season, that in their head, then I think there's a good chance that Carolina is going to be in a position to lose this game. But there's still a way for this to show progress. That's what you want to see. Even if Carolina doesn't win this game, just show signs of progress. Give us a little bit of hope that this team is going to be able to compete down the stretch this season. They're going to be able to win some more games and potentially sneak their way into a bowl game. That would be something that I would like to see on Saturday, even if there is still a lack of talent and it's very obvious for Carolina. The other thing that I had written down here is, can the team compete better in the trenches? The reason that I say this is because there are two guys in particular that were not playing for Carolina that are playing in this game. Now, one of them, on the offensive side of the ball, Austin Blaske, he played in the last game, but didn't look 100% healthy. Now he's had an extra week to sort of get even more healthy than he was during that matchup against Central Florida, get more comfortable with playing the left tackle spot. I believe he's going to look a lot different in this game, probably look a lot more confident and look a lot more like the guy that we saw playing center for Carolina during last season. Then there is the defensive side of the ball. And if you guys haven't seen the injury report yet, there is one name on the injury report that should have you more excited than any, and that is Price Yates being listed as probable. That means that we are probably going to be able to see him for the first time this year. That should be a very welcome addition at the edge rusher spot, because you're talking about a guy that when he was healthy the last couple of years, he was incredibly impactful in terms of tackles for loss, in terms of sacks. He creates those havoc plays on that side of the ball. Carolina has not had a guy that's been able to consistently do that so far this year. So I ask you, with those additions to Carolina's offensive and defensive lines, do you believe that they'll be able to compete better in the trenches?
Yeah, I don't know about the offensive line, just because Clemson's got some studs up front that If this is the day that they want to play to their talent, I mean, they're as good as they're as good as any defensive lineman there is in college football. And Belichick said the other day they're still trying to find the right combination of 5 offensive linemen. Because sometimes your most talented 5 aren't the best 5 to play together. So I think that was his way of saying, without saying, there could still be rotation that we see as the game moves along on Saturday. After 4 games, you would have really liked to see that to be cleared up, but that's not where Carolina is right now. Getting Yates back on the defensive line is going to be the biggest boost that this defense will receive all season long, because he's the one guy in that group that can win his battles one-on-one and can go in there and win battles one-on-one. And to the point where he will, I think, maybe not in this game, but maybe, let's say, by California, he will have to demand a double team. And it'll just make the jobs easier for everyone else, make it easier for Stephen Belichick to scheme up blitz, scheme up pressure, which is something that I told you after TCU was just going to be the reality of how they were going to have to get pressure. Because I don't know, this might be a little harsh. All the guys that have played meaningful snaps for Carolina right now through the first 4 games of the year, I'm not saying that they're not power forward talented guys. I think they are. But I think they are guys that are playing 15 to 20 snaps a game. Not the snaps they've played so far the first 4 games of the season, which is why I think these guys could be in the program next year, but they could be backups, because I do think Belichick and Lombardi are going to overhaul the defensive line in a massive way through high school recruiting, through the transfer portal. So if Price Yates can go, I think Carolina will look better up front, because I do think he could win some matchups one-on-one and maybe impact a handful of plays in just the ways that Carolina has not been able to do so the first 4 games of the year. I think you'll see his impact and what it means show up in a bigger way when they come back off the second bye week, where he's even a little bit more healthier, a little bit more in a rhythm, and then you can see the defensive line maybe take a step forward after struggling the first handful of games this season.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the years that he played at UConn. 2022, 9 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. 2023, 14 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. And 2024, played in only 7 games that season. 6.5 sacks, or 6.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. And we saw what he was able to do against Carolina in the bowl game. So I think you're right. There really could not be a much bigger addition on that side of the ball than what we saw. So that's going to be huge for Carolina. In terms of some of the other guys that show up on the injury report, nothing to be too concerned about. I don't know if there's anybody else that's even listed as questionable, but this is from someone who sent it over from what Inside Carolina had on their website. Chris Culliver, Caleb Hood, Gavin Gibson, Price Yates, as we told you, Ty Adams, Evan Bennett, the linebacker, Connor Cox, the tight end, Isaiah Johnson, the defensive lineman, and Gaetano Bartolomeu, the kicker, are all probable for this game. So they have had some sort of injuries that have popped up. Of course, this is something new to the ACC this year. The ACC and the SEC, I know, are 2 of the sides that have embraced this, where you do have to have injury reports before every game that is played of conference play. So we will be seeing these the rest of the year for Carolina. No one, again, that's really as significant as Price Yates, though, that is on that list. All right, let's get to our keys to the game for this one. And, I mean, the first key to the game is pretty simple. And normally we are more specific when it comes to the keys to the game. But this one, I mean, I just put have a pulse offensively. If you have even remotely any sort of efficiency on the offensive side of the ball, and you can put up points in this game, you have got a chance to beat this team, because Clemson is a team that is struggling so badly on the offensive side of the ball. even against Carolina's defense, I don't know if they're going to necessarily go crazy. Not like, we've seen some Clemson offenses in the past under, as you mentioned, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence. This is not that type of offense. So you don't have to put up 40, 45, 50 points to win a game. If you put up it somewhere in the high 20s, you may be able to find yourself in a position to win this game for Carolina. But to me, it's just you gotta have some sort of some rhythm offensively, something that we can feel positive about on that side of the ball, no matter what happens in this game with the ultimate result, but especially if you want to win this football game.
They gotta have and start to cultivate and create an identity. I know that they can run the football with Damon June, but are they going to commit to running the football with Damon June? Because the running back rotation in Central Florida was blasphemy after the way that he looked against Richmond and really had established himself in everyone's mind, whether you're a Carolina fan or you just cover the heels, as RB1 for the team. And, he wasn't utilized as such in that ball game. Now, granted, you got to keep the game close enough to where you can run it, but it wasn't like Carolina was getting blown out right from the jump. It did take a while for Central Florida to really create separation between them and Carolina. So we've seen Freddie Kitchens be able to do a really good job scripting the first drive. 3 in 3 of the 4 games, Carolina has gotten points, I think, on their opening possession. And the one that you didn't, you moved the football right down the field before, Gio Lopez threw an interception, I believe. So it's being able to build off of that and really just sustain it as the game moves along. I'm not expecting this team to come out and score 38, 45 points on Saturday, but you at least got to get to 24, 28 to give yourself a shot, which means sustaining what you do early on, and hopefully when the final whistle blows, whether Carolina's up or down on the scoreboard, we can look at the offense. And when we come back on here on Monday and recap it, we can tell you we know moving forward this team can do X, Y, and Z, because we haven't been able to say that after any game so far this season.
Yeah. The second key to the game, create turnovers. I think this is going to be important. Carolina is a team that when we talk about teams that, find a way to pull some of these upsets. I mean, let's be honest. Even though Carolina comes in with a better record to this game, even though Clemson comes in at 1-3, this is a game that Carolina is the underdog in. They are 14.5-point underdogs in this game. It's going to take something pretty significant for Carolina to win this game. And so if you are going to pull an upset, then you've got to be able to create turnovers. That's one of the things that can make these games ugly. I'm not saying you got to create 5 or 6 turnovers, but if you can create 2 or 3 and hold on to the ball on the other side, then I think you've got a legitimate chance to be able to win this game. It's going to set you up with shorter field position, which, regardless of which quarterback is in there, is going to allow you to feel like you have a chance to have more success. And I think the other thing is you just want to get Cade Klubnik and this offense out of rhythm. Get them back to feeling like, here we go again. This is another one of these games where we're going to struggle. Remember, it's a team that struggled against Troy earlier in the season. Now, Troy may end up being a team that is really competitive in the Sun Belt. Could be a team that ends up potentially winning the Sun Belt. And we could look back and say, well, if Carolina played them, then they probably would have lost. Still, that's a group of 5 opponent. If they can do it, then Carolina should be able to do it as well. I think in order to muddy this game up, you've got to be able to come away with a few turnovers. And I think Carolina is capable of it. It's just about going out there and doing it.
The good thing is that you're going up against a quarterback that, if all hell breaks loose, will put the ball in harm's way. There's been a regression to the mean with Cade Klubnik's decision-making. There's been just some mind-boggling turnovers he's committed that's cost Clemson games. Ideally, you can look at that Georgia Tech game, and he had some turnovers there that really played a role in why they did not emerge from that game victorious. It starts with getting pressure on him, because for him to be as experienced as he is, when he feels pressure, he doesn't trust his footwork. He leaves the pocket, and he doesn't make the best decisions with the football. So that's something that you've got to take advantage of. You got to know when you scout him, it's okay. Yeah, I may be putting my guys, in one-on-one situations, but if my blitz works, if the pressure works and we get there, we might be able to force a fumble, generate an interception that results in a defensive score or a short field or takes points off the board for them. And you're going to have to, find a way, I think, to steal points and steal possessions away from this Clemson offense on Saturday. So, it starts with those guys up front. And then when you have a chance to make a play or two on the football, can you make those two plays? The thing is that you're going up against a quarterback that will give you the opportunity if you get in his head, if you rattle him. So it's up to Steven Belichick. It's up to that defensive line, I think, to get him off his game, because as we've seen so far this season, when he gets off his game, he reverts back to old habits, and those old habits are turning the football over in advantageous situations. And Carolina's going to need at least 2 turnovers, I think, if they want to come away with a win.
The final key to the game is find the end zone, and Carolina's got to be able to do it. You got to be able to put up those points in this game. Again, one of the things that Clemson hasn't been great at, we talked about how they have moved the football pretty successfully, something that Carolina really hasn't been able to do. But their thing is that when they've gotten to the red zone, they haven't necessarily been able to convert. So far this season, I mean, they are converting They are converting 60% of their appearances in the red zone into touchdowns, but they've only been in the red zone 10 times. That's one of the big things for them, is they haven't really been there that often. And when they're getting there, they're not necessarily getting touchdowns out of it at the rate that they need to. So I think for Carolina, when you get to the red zone, you've got to be able to score touchdowns. This is not a game where you can afford to kick a lot of field goals. I know we've seen that early on this season where Carolina's gotten into the red zone. They've kicked the ball, kicked field goals at a pretty decent rate. Carolina's got a pretty good defensive red zone group. It's just now, can you execute on the offensive side of the ball when you get in the red zone? You've got to do that better than Clemson does in this game if you want to come away with the win.
Yeah, they got to get to at least 24 points, and I think it'd be easier for them to do so if they score touchdowns as opposed to kicking eight field goals, because if you kick 8 field goals, then I think you're probably kicking a field goal in virtually every single one of your possessions. And I can't demand that from this offense. So can you get 2-3 touchdowns? If you settle for a field goal or 2, it's not going to be the end of the world, but you got to put 6 up on the board more often than you put 3. And I do think that if Carolina shows that they can move the ball against this Clemson defense, I think it'll be kind of like what you saw against Syracuse, where it's deja vu all over again. And you could just see that unit quit and really start to be some infighting, because I think they believe internally they should be able to overwhelm Carolina's offense, given how bad it's looked so far in Power 4 competition against 2 schools from the Big 12. They don't have the athletes on that side of the ball that Clemson has. So, but you're right. You've got to score. I would say they got to score at least 3 touchdowns, because I think you got to score at least 24, 27 points to put yourself in a position to win the football game. So that means, when you get inside the 20, Freddie Kitchens really making the most of those play calls and utilizing his best playmakers, a.k.a. Damon June, finding a way to get the football in Jordan Shipp's hands. Can you get the tight ends maybe involved as well? So, but you're right. It's a simple concept, because scoring touchdowns is the name of the game. But as bad as this Carolina offense has been at times, it's a requisite key to the game. And there's just not a scenario where I think Carolina wins this game, settling for more field goals than touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, Carolina, you look at them, they've only been in the red zone 11 times so far this year. Only 54.5 of those have been converted into touchdowns. That's just 6 on their side too. So whoever is more efficient at doing that in this game is going to be the one that's going to win this game. All right, let's get to our predictions for the game. Did want to start out with one of our watcher predictions, listener predictions. I don't know which one you'd like to call it. One of our viewer. That's what it is. That's the word I was looking for there. Greg Ward, he says Clemson 28, the Heels 14, but he did say that that's just his gut feeling on the score. But if he sees growth and the Heels move the ball, he'll feel better about what's left for this year. I feel very similar to him. What about you, though? What do you see happening in this game on Saturday in Kenan Stadium for the Tar Heels?
Yeah, back in the preseason, I picked Carolina to lose the game. I'm not straying from that prediction. But given where I thought Carolina was going to be and where they are in reality, I thought this would be a game that would be close. And I thought it'd be maybe a game that, Clemson got their biggest scare from during the regular season, because I had Clemson, as I mentioned, winning the national championship, going 16-0 in the process. That's not going to happen. They're 1-3. They're not even going to make the playoff, barring just something, miraculous where the ACC, falls apart around them and they take advantage of that. I want to believe that Carolina took a step forward during the bye week, and I will maintain that belief until I have reason to disbelieve otherwise. With that being said, Clemson at some point is going to look like the preseason top 5 team that they were. And I think, unfortunately, we get a glimpse of that on Saturday afternoon in Kenan Stadium. I think the Heels fall 28-10 to the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhere in that same area for me. I think defensively, you're going to see a Clemson team that's going to look very much like the group that we thought they were going to look like coming into the season. You will see a group that's incredibly motivated. Don't get it wrong. I think Carolina is going to be motivated too. But Clemson is going to be the team that feels like this is their get-right game, where I don't think Carolina's looking at this game against Clemson as one of those chances. Maybe they do. Maybe they look at it and say, this is one of the weaker teams left on our schedule. This is a chance to get ourselves turned in the right direction. But Clemson definitely feels like that. They're going to come out motivated to try to get this thing turned back in the right direction. Because even though Dabo has said it's over, that this team isn't making the ACC championship game, they turn this thing back around. They do what they did a couple of years ago, which is basically win every game the rest of the season. After Tyler from Spartanburg came on and criticized Dabo Swinney, then this team will have a chance to potentially make it to Charlotte. I think that message is probably being communicated by the guys in that locker room. I think you're going to see that in this game. And I like Clemson to come away 31-10 over Carolina in Kenan Stadium. I'm just hoping that I'm wrong. The main thing is that I'm rolling with my prediction, and maybe you're doing the same. I'm doing that with Gio Lopez as the quarterback, because I think he's going to be in there. If it's Max Johnson, I think Carolina stands a better chance. I would say probably not by much, but I would say 31-17 is probably the final score in that case. And people would say, well, how does that really look that much different? That extra touchdown is important. I think Carolina would be able to move the ball a little bit more consistently, but I just don't think they would have the horses. I want to see it. That's what I want to see. I want to be somewhere in that range, and I want to be where Greg Ward is at, where, yes, maybe Carolina doesn't walk away with a victory, but at least look the part in this game, at least look like a competent offense and give us some hope for the rest of the season. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast, guys. Make sure you head over to the website, heeltoughblog.com. As I mentioned, we will have something up on the injury report side of things. We will make sure that we get, all of the latest on that side, and then give you that injury report here before the night is over. And then keep an eye out tomorrow. We'll have the preview article that will go up for you guys there, where you can read about the two teams in depth. We'll have the breakdown of Carolina, breakdown of Clemson. You'll have the stat breakdowns for you guys, sort of compare where the teams are at in key categories for the 2025 season coming into this matchup. We have the keys to the game, which we will go a little more in depth with on there. The injury report will be included in there. Of course, any adjustments that happen to the injury report, we will keep you guys up to date all the way up until game time when it comes to that. And then finally, we will have the projected starting lineup. So make sure that you guys are keeping an eye out for that. And any other news that comes out around the football program, we will have you covered. Basketball side of things. After the game is over on Saturday, the thing you should do is, if you are going to the game like we are, you should immediately head over to the Smith Center, watch the blue-white scrimmage, and get a feel for where this Tar Heel basketball team is at. After that's over, what you should do immediately after that's over, well, probably get in the car and drive yourself back home. But then we will have a article up on the website that will recap what we saw in the blue-white scrimmage, what Josh saw in the blue-white scrimmage. And then on the Four Corners side of things, make sure you keep an eye out tomorrow previewing the blue-white scrimmage, and make sure that you guys are keeping tabs on us over the weekend, because we will have a recap of the blue-white scrimmage at some point. Either Saturday night right after it's done and we get home, or Sunday evening, we will have that up for you. So make sure that you guys keep an eye out for all of that great stuff here on these same pages where you're watching the podcast, or that YouTube page, as we've told you about. That's our big thing. Again, we're really trying to hit that hard. You guys have helped us by, helping us get a sponsor by hitting that subscribe link on YouTube. Make sure that you guys are doing that so that you can continue to help us out as we try to pursue some more sponsors on that side of things. So once again, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.